Now, 6 o'clock, I'm admitting all now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in just 1 minute. I'll let a few more folks trickle in here. All right, thank you so much for joining us this evening for our our sixth public workshop on the future land use update for the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This meeting is being recorded. This recording and the presentation will be available on our website, planhillsborough.org/HC land use. For any technical issues throughout this session, you can either chat our host or you can contact Andrea at papandrewa@plancom.org and we'll be happy to help you out. After this presentation, we will have an open Q&A. So at that time, please use the raise hand feature to ask a question or our chat. Please keep your microphone muted and your camera off unless you are speaking. You may use the chat feature to ask the presenters a question during our Q&A. Please note that some features may look a little different if you're on a desktop or mobile device. Again, if you have any issues, you can certainly chat us at any time or shoot us an email. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our colleague Sean to get us started here. He's got some cool updates that he wants to share with you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean College with Hillsborough Planning Commission staff. And although this is a public meeting on the future land use element, we have a related plan amendment that we wanted to tell you about really quick before we get into the future land use element. And that is a plan amendment on utilities in the rural area. We're talking about water and sewer. So what does the comprehensive plan say right now? Right now, it talks about only very limited situations where public water and sewer is allowed to be extended out of the urban area and into the rural area. It would be done only under a documented public health hazard, a planned village, a project with established vested rights for service, serve a public school, or properties meeting certain requirements in the water resources areas. Connections to existing lines are allowed when adjacent, only those properties that are immediately adjacent and they meet certain criteria. Extensions and connections have additional restrictions. They should not be used as justification for urban level service or densities. So you can't have increases in densities if you're getting water and sewer just outside the urban service boundary, and it must be paid for by the requesting party. So that's what we have in the comprehensive plan now. And if we go to the next slide, I'll show you why we are doing this is that the comprehensive plan also says that staff will work with appropriate regulatory agencies on septic siting and wastewater connection policies. And the Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County requested that we look at this policy specifically to address environmental issues posed by the risks of concentrations of septic tanks. And so we worked with the Environmental Protection Commission and Water Resources Department, who does water and sewer, as well as development services, to address some of these concerns in the comprehensive plan. Next slide. So what is being proposed under this plan amendment 23-18 that is starting its process right now is some new policy on rural area utility extension for a documented environmental issue caused by septic or private franchise infrastructure. So that's the EPC is looking to protect the environment from the concentration of septic tanks. They could, and this would allow it to prevent the clustering of new septic tanks. The policy that's being updated would also allow properties adjacent to the existing rural lines to be serviced by water and sewer when subdividing those properties. Again, it does not allow for any increases in density of this rural area. And the size of the lines is restricted, again, to prevent any change in density, to keep it a rural area, but allow for some connection to water and sewer to avoid septic tanks. And the new policy would outline the process for enabling this rural utility extension, serving unique service circumstances and overriding public interests. And there are also some miscellaneous cleanup provisions in this plan amendment. Next slide. So that is what this plan amendment is doing. Again, it's plan amendment 2318. It is on our website. It's being distributed for agency comment now. We expect in December, the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will hold briefings on this plan amendment. And in January, the Planning Commission and the BOCC will hold public hearings. We expect a March BOCC adoption with an effective date in April or May. Again, the link shows where it is on our website if you wanted to look at it in more close detail. And that concludes this plan amendment, and we can get into the future land use element now. At the end, there'll be a question and answer session on both, or if you have an immediate question you wanted to get down, you can put it in the chat. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Sean. And as Sean mentioned, if you do have a question, feel free to type it into the chat, and we'll be happy to answer that through the chat if we can. If not, we'll definitely take time to answer that at the end of our presentation. So again, thank you so much for being here with us this evening for our community meeting. This is for the unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Section Update. So I am Amy Elmore. I'm one of the project managers working with a consulting firm, EXP, and I'm working closely with Melissa and Andrea on the Plan Hillsborough team to do this update. Though I'm a consultant, I am from here, I live here, I work here. I've been here for over 10 years now, and I am very proud to be a part of this project. So really quickly, we're going to be doing some introductions. We'll talk about the project overview. We'll also discuss a little bit about what we've heard so far, look at some future growth projections, and then also talk about some anticipated changes to our policies. We're also going to be talking about next steps and how you can stay involved. And at the very end, we're going to open it up for Q&A. Before I get started, I do want to mention that everything that you're hearing today, this is a conversation. This is still up for discussion. We are talking about it. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your feedback. And we are really glad that you are here. So nothing is set in stone right now. As I've mentioned in another presentation, we are still cooking in the kitchen. Nothing is baked. So we're really glad you're here to be a part of this conversation. So why are we doing this update? Well, essentially, this is to address future growth. We know that by 2045, unincorporated Hillsborough County is expecting to see possibly over 350,000 more people and 107,000 more jobs. And that means that we're going to have an increasing demand for transportation, county services, schools, and recreation. And we want to be able to plan for that. So we're doing this through our comprehensive plan, and we're calling that plan Creating Great Places. This is a legally required plan that's typically updated every 7 to 10 years. And the purpose of this plan is really to envision future growth, provide consistency, prioritize funding, and to protect our resources. Currently, we have updated quite a bit of this comprehensive plan. We have updated our natural open space section, our One Water section, our governance section, except for our public schools portion. And really, this is the last major piece of the puzzle, is our future land use section. So what is future land use exactly? Well, future land use guides the purpose and character of growth. It separates our land into general categories, and it sets maximum density and range of uses. Now, oftentimes I like to look at this as future land use is at the 10,000 foot view, whereas zoning, which is something a lot of us are familiar with, zoning rather is at that ground view. Zoning regulates building size, setbacks, and specific uses. It's used to approve or deny developments and uses, and it defines specific districts within general categories. So zoning is not what we're talking about today. That's regulated through our land development code, which the Hillsborough County Planning Department oversees. Today, we're talking about the future land use, that 10,000 foot view. And together, the future land use and our zoning help to maintain health, safety, and welfare by separating those incompatible land uses. But the comprehensive plan doesn't work alone. There are a lot of different other plans throughout the county that come together to create that comprehensive future, including the Land Development Code, which we mentioned oversees that zoning portion, and that's organized by Hillsborough County Planning Department. We also have our Transit Development Plan, which is organized by HART. And we have our Long Range Transportation Plan, looked at by the Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization. So all of these plans, along with many other local and regional plans, work together to help us identify how our future growth may happen. One term you've probably heard kicked around a little bit is our urban service area. Part of the adopted future land use elements growth management strategy is this urban service area. And over on the my right-hand side is a map of Hillsborough County. The square that you see is all of Hillsborough County. But the red areas here are our urban service area. So one thing I love about living in Hillsborough County and working here is that I can really have a choice if I want to be in an urban area, a suburban, or maybe even a rural area. And that is what our urban service area does for us. It allows us to have those different choices. So it identifies these different developments and areas, and it pinpoints where that growth is going to be focused. It helps to create compatible development patterns that efficiently utilize land and our county services. Now, please note that this does not include our cities like the city of Tampa, Plant City, or Temple Terrace. So the urban service area is just in the unincorporated Hillsborough County limits. What we do know is that in the urban service area, this red area here on your screen, only around 20% of that land is now developable or redevelopable. So let's break this down just a little bit further. So we know that a little over 51,000 total acres are developable or redevelopable within Plant City, Tampa, Temple Terrace, and the urban service area. About 65% of that is in the urban service area that's developable or redevelopable. About 35% of that is in Plant City, Tampa, and Temple Terrace. And here we have this map on the screen. We also have this image. Again, we'll have this presentation on our website in case you'd like to take a closer look and really zoom in. But our purple areas here are the developable lands, and the pink areas are the redevelopable lands. As you can see, we have very small lot sizes for the majority of this developable and redevelopable land. And many of the larger lot sizes have other criteria that have to be met that limits the uses as well. Please also note that any time we're talking about developable or redevelopable land, this completely excludes wetlands or other conservation areas. So we do not consider those developable or redevelopable in any of our conversations. This is outside of any kind of wetlands or conservation areas that we're talking about. So what have we heard so far? We've done a lot of public outreach, and we previously did a survey where we heard from over 1,800 participants. We collected 32,000 data points, and we collected 1,600 comments, as well as 5,600 data points on a map. So we had a wonderful foundation of public comment here. And based on this survey, we asked people, what is your priority? And the top 4 priorities that were pretty consistent were to preserve natural areas first and foremost, then to look at our infrastructure and development, then to maintain agriculture and rural lands, and to also offer a variety of mobility choices. So these were the top 4 priorities that were identified. We also asked about inward growth, what to consider when we are growing inside that urban service area, that red that we saw previously on the screen. The most important thing when we were thinking about growth inside the urban service area was efficiency of existing infrastructure, maximizing that existing infrastructure, whereas the least important was focusing on a variety of housing types. However, this was still pretty important. You can see here on the screen, we've got several of the different, answers here, and people still felt that efficiency of existing infrastructure was most important. Being close to daily needs was also very important. Safe walking and biking. And also last was a variety of housing types, but not by much. So we know that we need to focus on all 4 of these things, all 4 of these priorities. Also, in our survey, we asked about outward growth, growing outside the urban service area. And the most important thing people felt is that we need to minimize impacts to our environment. The least important was access to major highways. Here, let's take a deeper dive into that question. So again, most everyone felt that minimizing impacts to the environment was very important. Preservation of rural areas also ranked highly, as well as having compatible land uses and having infrastructure in place. And then access to major highways was last. So all of the outreach that we've done so far, we've had 3 virtual public meetings, 2 in-person public meetings, 3 project advisory team meetings, our online survey with over 1,800 responses, and now we're doing this November outreach. All together, we've really heard some very common themes: minimize environmental impacts, maintain the character of our neighborhoods, put residential closer to our daily needs, use vacant land before expanding, increase safety of biking and walking, reduce traffic, and have more affordable housing. Now, these are not all the comments that we heard, so we're actually creating a very comprehensive list of all the comments that we've received. And we're going to be able to present that online, and you'll be able to find that before the next public hearing on our website. So let's dive into some of the anticipated changes for our policy directions for the future land use section. Again, I'd like to just reiterate that this is a conversation. We still want to hear your thoughts, hear your ideas. This is still a discussion, and we are not baked yet. We're still in the mixing bowl. I also want to note that everything that you see today has been approved by our county attorney's office, especially in regard to some relatively new state legislation, SB 250, which is intended to accelerate rebuilding following hurricanes and other natural disasters. This does apply to local governments within a 100-mile buffer, so that does include us. And these local governments are not allowed to increase building fees or adopt more restrictive or burdensome procedures to its comprehensive plan or land development regulations. This bill is in effect through October 1st of 2024 and applies retroactively to September 28th, 2022. So let's take a look at the very first goal, goal 1, our growth management goal. Now, if you've been with us throughout all of this public engagement, you've heard us talk about inward growth and outward growth. So this is really looking at that publicly initiated strategic expansion. So again, we've talked a lot about this at previous community meetings, and we're focusing this goal 1 on looking at outward growth. So first, we know that we have some minor revisions to the rural area policies. We've removed some duplicative language, and we've simplified some existing language. We've also relocated some well and septic language to the one water section, which Sean discussed just a little bit ago. So let's take a look at our outward growth strategies. Well, up until now, the urban service area has not been expanded through a publicly initiated plan amendment. Instead, we've had applicant-driven expansion. So we decided that we wanted to be proactive in a strategic future expansion criteria instead of reactive. Now, we know that the question of where this growth may happen, that's a big question, and that's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of time and a lot more public engagement. So what we're focusing on right now with this goal is the criteria to consider for that future identification of growth, that strategic expansion. And so instead of asking how, instead of asking where, we're asking when, how, and what. When is it time to consider publicly initiated strategic expansion? How should we plan for that expansion? And what should we look at in those expansion areas? So when are we thinking this publicly initiated strategic expansion could happen? Well, essentially, we need to evaluate what we need to accommodate additional population or job growth from now until 2024, over the plan horizon, really, and even beyond. We're going to be taking a look at Planning Commission population estimates, as well as other forecasts and reports, and we're going to continuously evaluate that throughout our comprehensive plan updates. How? Well, essentially, we're going to establish expansion areas. We're going to have some master planning of existing rural areas. We are not going to move the urban service area boundary immediately. This requires a lot, like I said, a lot more planning and public engagement. We're going to provide for a transition to suburban or urban development pattern over that planning horizon. So we want to make sure that there's a transition happening from urban to suburban. We're going to allow for different policies or tools to be applied in expansion areas to guide new growth and infrastructure planning. And we want to make sure that these areas have the needed infrastructure to ensure adequate public facilities. So that may mean some amendments to our capital improvements. And what? Well, an urban expansion area master plan. This master plan will provide a sustainable mixed-use development pattern. It'll identify needed public facilities and plan for them to be provided timely with new development. It will align impact fees, mobility fees, and other tools to support growth. It'll explore public-private partnerships for infrastructure. This master plan will coordinate with external agencies like HART, the EPC, school districts, and it'll consider the fiscal impact to the county. The master plan will provide access to employment, daily commercial needs, cultural and recreational amenities, as well as community centers. And most importantly, it'll pursue community input and engagement. So let's jump into goal 2. Now, this is also growth management, but in this goal, we are encouraging inward. We're looking at the inward growth. So the first thing that we've done with this goal is we have added future land use categories table. We've added this table that identifies all of the future land use categories, their maximum densities and intensities, as well as their typical uses, so that you can see all of these categories easily and understandably. We're also simplifying the density and floor area ratio calculations, as well as the bonuses policy language to make that more understandable. We're looking at our new centers and connections language, which I'm very excited about, and we'll talk about in just a little bit. And we're providing for updated transfer of development rights pilot program with designated receiving areas to make that more implementable and a guide companion land development code amendments. And based on board direction, we're also looking at some new language on congregate living facilities. So keep an eye out for that, and it'll be coming up as well. So our centers and connections, this is a very exciting thing for us, section for us, and it's all about expanding choices for living and for getting around. It focuses on centers and corridors that are coordinated with community plans and major intersections. It expands housing opportunities and choices in areas that want it, that desire it, that have already identified that they want this type of growth. And it encourages more pedestrian-friendly development so that we have safer communities as well. It allows for an optional bonus in density or intensity. So this is really an incentive-based bonus, completely optional, and it's based on specific designs that will ultimately provide a benefit to the community. So you can see some of what this change could look like. Here on a before and after on the right-hand side, we've got a residential with 6 homes per acre and residential with 12 homes per acre. So with just a little bit of a bonus in the right areas that want this type of growth, we can really see some wonderful walkability and livability happening. Here is our centers and connections map that we have identified. You can see on the screen here, we've got these connections in pink and our centers and these purple circles here. Again, you can take a closer look on this on our website. And how did we identify these centers and connections? Well, we looked at walkability. We looked at areas that were already designated for growth. And we looked at major intersections or activity centers. Now, based on your public feedback, we began to take a look at what you said you wanted, and we did remove some centers and connections in South County and Brandon areas. We also tightened the buffer of the connections to focus growth in desirable areas. And then we added some centers and connections in the university area because we found that on our survey there was a lot of need and want for centers and connections in those areas. So let's move on to goal 3. This is for community context. This combines the compatibility and community planning sections. We moved 3 economically disadvantaged group element policies, and we had some minor revisions to cultural and historic preservations to reflect the current programs that we have. For our goal 4, this is our development goal, and we had some clarifications to mixed use and land use suitability. For example, we discussed what types of uses qualify for a mix of uses, whereas previously the future land use element was silent on this. We updated our transit-oriented development section as well as our commercial locational criteria section, and we'll get into a little more detail on those. And then we updated our airports and ports section in coordination with Tampa International Airport as well as other ports and airports. So our transit-oriented development, this is a really wonderful policy that's existing right now in our future land use. And so we were really just clarifying this section. This policy will apply within a half-mile radius of proposed stations or fixed guideway transit. It may allow for increased density or intensity in exchange for the designs that promote access to multiple mobility options, include affordable housing, include mixed uses to keep necessary services in close proximity to residences. And really, this transit-oriented development is really just there because we want to connect people to opportunity. That's the whole goal behind this section. Transit-oriented development will be adopted into the City of Tampa's comprehensive plan, which is being updated. And we're also going to be clarifying this language in the unincorporated Hillsborough County comprehensive plan. So right now we're looking at a possible area in Fowler Avenue that is being studied as a possible facility for transit-oriented development in the future. For the commercial locational criteria, we have listened to our public input as well as BOCC direction and changes in statute. So right now we have our context classification map that we're going to be moving forward with, but it's going to be working in conjunction with the 2040 cost affordable map. So this 2040 cost affordable map is a bit old, but the context classification map is going to be added to that map so that they will work in tandem. This will allow us to consider commercial at some intersections, but we'll also make sure that any consideration is looked at with our compatibility and community plan policies, ensuring that those are still required. We're also adding a neighborhood mixed use 6 category that permits commercial activities without permitting high density development. So this is especially useful for your mom and pop coffee shops or places that want to be commercial but not necessarily need the density. And then we're also clarifying that community plan language so that applications for commercial uses are subject to our community plan. For goal 5, we're looking at our agriculture. We have minor revisions to reflect our current programs, no changes to planned village policies, and no changes to adoption or child care and community and Planned Environmental Community 1/2. This was all minor revisions are in coordination with the Agriculture Economic Development Council, Farm Bureau, and Soil and Water Conservation District. For goal 6, this is talking about our built environment, and this is where the majority of our design-related policies have moved. Design-related policies may look at urban, suburban, and rural form, or mixed use and commercial character, transportation, and landscape design. So these have all been clarified and simplified. We've also removed duplicative policies and moved the majority of these design-related policies to goal 6. Taking a look at goal 7, we have a balance with natural resources. Again, we're revising this to reflect our current programs, removing duplicative policies. We're retaining our working waterfront language, and we're adding additional language on transmitting plan amendments to Port Tampa Bay. For goal 8, economic development, we have minor revisions again to reflect our current programs, new policies to protect and encourage office and industrial land uses. We have a removal of Interstate 75 policies simply because they're outdated policies. And we've moved some existing policies under other goals. So they haven't gone away, they've just been moved, such as the encouraged provision of affordable housing within mixed-use developments. So what's next? Well, we have several different ways that you can still get involved. We have a project advisory team meeting in person on Tuesday, November 15th, and virtually on Wednesday, November 16th. Now at these PAT meetings, we are going to be diving even deeper into the language of these specific goals. And then we'll have our public hearings coming up in November and January. There are a lot of different ways that you can provide feedback now and in the future. You can, of course, just scan the QR code here or go to planhillsboro.org/HC land use. And you can fill out a comment form. You can take a look at the project page, and you can email staff. You can always contact us at any time. Melissa and Andrea are always wonderful ears and very understanding. They love to talk with people, especially if you have specific questions about your property and or anything else that you may have in mind that you'd like to discuss. So with that, I would love to open this up for some discussion. As I mentioned, if you do have a question, you may raise your hand and we will unmute you, but you can also ask your question in the chat and we'll be happy to answer that as well. So with that, I would love to open this up for comments. Melissa or Andrea or David, did you see anyone who, any questions that we should answer? Go ahead, David.
Sure. Yes, there's a question from Sabine. It says, developers seem to use requests for rezoning a great deal. Will this new plan provide enough incentives to discourage growth in areas that aren't zoned for density because of natural features, etc.?
So David, I had answered that in the chat. I wrote, Sabine, that's a great question. We've included a new incentive for growth inside the urban service area through the Centers and Connections initiative that Amy went through a couple of goals ago. We also have extensive language adopted in the comprehensive plan today that protects wetlands and other natural features. And then I do believe after I wrote that, it's hard to follow, the chat's very busy. And then Sabine had said, will that discourage a developer who buys land in a greenfield because it's cheaper and then apply for a rezoning? rezoning it for an inappropriate use. My answer to that would be at the rezoning stage, we would look at that as part of our consistency review. Planning Commission staff is who I mean by we. And we would look at to see what the wetland impacts are, but we do take the lead from our technical experts. So if the EPC has approved some environmental, some wetland impacts, and they've done some mitigation, that is something for EPC as a technical expert to decide. The same goes, with natural resources and other environmental agencies. So we would take their lead, but we do have very solid policy direction in the comprehensive plan today, that is not being changed with this update, that would avoid those impacts, and they do not support impacts to natural areas.
Thank you. We have another question from Dominic. It says, can numerical limits to population growth on a countywide basis be implemented?
Yes, hello, this is Yasser Gonzalez. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, indeed. So I'm the economist demographer, here to assist. We really don't have a way to place numerical growth place numerical limits on growth. Nobody really has that ability, but through exercises like this, we can help direct and shape the kind of growth. That's why you're going to see they talk about centers and connections. You talked about, what kind of community do you want? So every time we work with a community or with the whole unincorporated county, we are asking people, what is it the community that you want to live in, and what are the things that we do? So when people come in here, they will kind of fit in, like dovetail into what's already planned and stipulated. Thank you.
And let me just add to that. I mean, furthermore, I think if David or Melissa Lionheart weren't going to mention it, I'll jump in, that state law requires us to plan for the population that is expected to be coming to the county. So by state law, we have to accommodate the population that's coming, although we do try to mitigate the impacts of that growth.
The next question we have from Travis. How does the county plan to retain rural or unincorporated areas? Not everyone wants to live in a city or suburb.
I'd be happy to take that one, David. That's a great question. I think one of the best things we have in our comprehensive plan today, and that we are not changing with the update, so we're keeping the language. We have very strong policies about maintaining your choices. We definitely feel very strongly, and I know that the public feels very strongly. We've heard that from citizens in all the community meetings, that people really want to have a choice of a lifestyle. If they want to choose urban, there's a place for that. If they want to choose more suburban lifestyle, there's a place for that. If they want to choose more rural, there are lots of places for that as well. And our policy language about preservation of rural areas will not change with this update. We have very strong language right now, and if you have followed our plan amendments that have been submitted, and if you've followed those plan amendments that have been submitted in the past couple of years, we've held the line on growth in the rural area, and our language is very clear and explicit on that.
Right. Next question, it's from David. With remote working becoming more prominent, a lot of office space is now vacant, along with areas that could be looked at as revitalization potentials. How do you explore all of those areas first before starting new construction?
So the way that I would answer that question, David, is I would say that that the comprehensive plan is really at 30,000 feet. We're really zoomed out with policy for this document. So we're really not addressing different areas for redevelopment or things like that. And specifically in particular, we're really talking about the overall vision and kind of looking at it from a 30,000 feet.
All right, thank you. Next question is from Scott. It says, the feedback emphasized preserve natural areas. However, I wonder if the general public thinks of this as the trees and green space near them, whereas the county staff may understand this as conservation and wetland areas. This could be understood as a cognitive dissonance between the ground level and the 10,000-foot perspective. Did the survey define natural areas? Does the plan accommodate preservation of green spaces rather than just officially designate conservation and wetland areas?
Well, I don't
think that, oh, go ahead, Sean.
I don't think the survey defined what those areas are. But we can't just arbitrarily preserve or, mandate that someone's property, which may be, a somewhat natural area, be preserved. People who own property are expected under law to have reasonable use of their property. So what we do in Florida under the law is we have some regulation that without compensations requires people to preserve their wetlands, which or mitigate them or avoid them. We try to avoid first, minimize impact, and mitigate if we have to accommodate reasonable use. On the other hand, for natural areas that are uplands, we have programs such as the Environmental Land Acquisition and Protection Program, which pays people and acquires their property and pays them for their property, and that has been very successful, and it's preserved about over 65,000 acres in Hillsborough counties. So through those two programs in particular is also a significant wildlife habitat program, which also protects some land, uplands and wetlands, without compensation. So there are a number of different ways that these programs preserve natural areas. Obviously, we can't preserve all areas, and people need reasonable use of their property, but through those programs, it's been very successful, and ELAPS is a model that's been used all over the country.
Thank you, Sean. Well, we have a next question from Keith. Whatever happened to the toll road from 275 at 75 terminating in Plant City? Is it expected to be resurrected? That might be for Johnny, maybe.
Yeah, so there's a project right now to build express lanes on I-75. There was a plan some years back to have express lanes on I-275, but our board changed that so that they would terminate up to the downtown interchange and wouldn't extend any further north than that. I would have to get back and let you know if the I-75 express lanes would go all the way out to Plant City. I'm not exactly sure how far north those will go once they're installed.
Thank you, Johnny. Next question is from David. It says water supply is a major concern along with sinkholes. How do we, I assume it says, how do we mitigate our water issues for this significant growth expectancy?
Well, through conservation, primarily. In Hillsborough County, unincorporated Hillsborough County, our water is provided by Tampa Bay Water, a regional water wholesaler, and they're charged with developing water resources to provide water to people. They also have that in SwiftMud, the water management district, as well as the county water department have programs for conservation. So a two-pronged approach, developing safe sources of water to meet our supplies, as well as conservation, are the approach that the agencies are in the county is taking to meet our water supply needs.
Thanks, Sean. The next question says, how does this relate to existing projects like what is happening at Schimberg Park, which I'm not familiar with, but.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that either. This doesn't relate specifically to one project or another. This is really setting a large policy direction so that when projects come in, we have a standard in which to evaluate them. So it's not about one project in particular, and I'm not familiar with that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Next question says, how might the Live Local Act tie into these considerations?
That's a great question. I don't really think any of us have the answer on that because it is such new legislation. So I think we're all the jurisdictions. Actually, we just had a meeting with the 4 jurisdictions in Hillsborough County on Friday to talk through the Live Local Act. So I think we're still trying to figure that out with all the attorneys and how that all works together. And actually, it's my understanding in the review of the Live Local Act applications that we will not be providing a consistency review. So it doesn't appear that the Planning Commission staff are really going to have a role in the Live Local Act moving forward. But it is something that we know about and we're watching and monitoring. But that is really for more of the zoning staff, who do the short-term planning, the ones that do permitting and things like that. They're the entities that will have the applications and review those.
All right, next question, I guess, came into Mike, so we don't have a name tied to it. But the question is, since many of the comments received seem to really want mixed-use development, then give some examples. How do we bring all the players to the table at the same time instead of the current disconnected groups of HARD, TPO, Plan Hillsborough, and I've lost the chat, BOCC, the school board, etc. Any comments on that?
I think that's a really great question. I think it's something that we're all striving to be better at and work together through. I can say at our agency, which is, our umbrella agency is Plan Hillsborough, and we have 3 different entities under that. So we have the River Board, we have the Transportation Planning Organization, and then we also have the Planning Commission. So the fact that we're all under one roof together, I mean, physically in an office together, like Johnny's office is just down the street from mine. So we are all together and having these conversations continually. And as part of our strategic planning effort a few years ago, we started really focusing on making sure that we talk about land use and transportation together as one conversation. So we've really tried to work with the Planning Commission staff, really works with the TPO staff. I know for one, our rezoning cases for unincorporated Hillsborough County that we make a consistency finding for. We have a meeting every single month with TPO staff just to go through, hey, here's what's happening on the ground, here's the application. And then, the TPO staff person will typically say, oh, well, there's a trail over here, or this is on the high injury network. So there's a lot of things that we're talking through and trying to coordinate. But yes, you are correct. There are a lot of agencies in the government, and there are a lot of different needs that, like the school district is one, and they all provide comments through agency comment review for plan amendments. And then I know even though rezonings are not our process that we run, they also make comments for rezonings as well. So at least they're informed and they're in the loop.
Thank you. All right, next question, and there's a lot of questions coming in, and it's hard to keep track of them. Let's see. In your population growth, this might be for Yasser, are you taking into the consideration the challenge on getting home insurance, or is this why it seems that we are moving to more of multifamily structures setup?
Yeah, it is Yasser Gonzalez once again. The instability in the insurance markets is a feature of the system. It's been a feature for a while. When I remember being a homeowner and waiting outside an insurance office in order to get a policy because a hurricane was coming our way and my insurance just happened to lapse at that point. So again, that was quite a few years ago. So that tells you that again, this instability is not something that's new or that is supposed to be. Now, the instability as reflected in the growth patterns. So we have historical growth that we use to forecast forward. If people are giving pause or thinking, giving a second look because they hear all this insurance, that should be reflected in the growth that we've seen, and that will be reflected going forward. But we're not seeing that. We haven't seen that in quite some time. What we're seeing is that this, now with the new special session, the legislature expects a lot of companies to come into the market, given the new rules of the market, of the insurance market. So we're not expecting that the instability in insurance markets is going to dramatically affect growth. At least we have not seen it. We may see it in the next 10 years, but right now we're not seeing it. We haven't seen it for quite some time because remember, we've had hurricanes, we've had all this climate changes and things like that, and still people can get insurance or the state will step in and provide insurance, so the growth continues. Thank you.
All right, next question we have from David Coleman. He says it's a follow-up. Is or is not the city part of the county? The commissioners from East County want to continually pull money from the urban core. Our transit is awful, so it's not really a question. But yes, the cities are part of the county, but this is specifically the comprehensive plan for unincorporated county. The cities themselves all have their own comprehensive plan. So I hope that answers that question. Harrison Lundy wrote, as it relates to transit, do you have any language about the current system of traffic lights in the county? As someone who lives in southern Hillsborough, I've seen a pretty sizable growth, but the traffic technology really mostly lights. doesn't seem to have changed much. That's probably for Johnny.
Yeah, thanks, David. I was just actually typing up a response to that,
Oh.
but it seems clear that the person who asked the question has seen that the traffic technology varies greatly across the county and across the cities as well. Most of the intersections, just due to funding constraints, are operating on a legacy system. Those have to be preset with old school traffic controllers. So the timing is set and it doesn't really change. Some intersections have been upgraded with new technology that can be adaptive to real-time conditions, but those are very few and far between. Harrison, if you'd like to get in touch with me, I can put you in contact with some of the traffic ops folks if you have questions about specific intersections. But what I will say is that technology is fairly expensive compared to a traditional traffic signal. You're looking at a price increase of maybe 3 to 4 times what the old school technology costs. So the rollout is going to be slow, and with absent a new funding source, that'll take quite a long time to update all of the existing intersections.
Thanks, Johnny. Next, we have another question from David. It says affordable housing exists nowhere. Senior housing such as JL Young is nothing more than block jail cells. What if 150,000 don't move here or move to the city rather than the county?
So I'll take the affordable housing part, and maybe Yasser could chime in about the population coming or not coming. But as far as affordable housing is concerned, we don't have requirements for things needing to be affordable. The only time that's a requirement is if you're taking advantage of the affordable housing density bonus. So if you were to request an increased density for a project through a rezoning application, say you had 9 dwelling units per acre in your category of residential 9, and then someone wanted to get 12 units an acre or something similar to that, they would go through the process, the rezoning process, to achieve that bonus. And then so it's outlined as an incentive, but it is not a requirement. And we do agree that we do need a lot more affordable housing. If the data is out there, we do understand that. We did just update the housing section. This is the future land use section of the comprehensive plan. There are several. They used to be called elements. Now they're called sections. But the housing was, I think, about a year ago it was adopted. So that does have new language in it, very supportive language on affordable housing. So when projects do come in, we do tend to support them if they meet the requirements. But at this point, there is no requirement for affordable housing. Yasser, did you want to address the population?
Yes, indeed. As we said, we're using historical growth to forecast forward. Now, the unincorporated county has the largest landmass of the county. Therefore, that's where most people are going to go. That's where you have the most variety of inventory, all sorts of housing types, and also that's where you have the most land. And they have the capacity to serve that land. So that's where nearly 3 out of 4 people are going to be moving to the unincorporated area of the county.
Thanks, Yasser. Next, we have a question from Clara. She says, what can be done to reduce the temptation of developers to cut down protected trees and have developers just pay a fine and continue development? We would like to see the protections strengthened enough to truly protect those environmental resources. It is too easy to kill now and pay a small fine later, even if the penalty is even enforced.
That's a great question. I would say that the way that you would affect change in these types of ways is really through the regulations. So something like a land development code change. That's what unincorporated Hillsborough County has, where there's actually a requirement in place that says, no, you cannot, or yes, you can do certain things. The comprehensive plan, like I was saying before, has very supportive language about environmental protection. And that's a plethora of environmental protection. So natural resources, animal habitats, significant wildlife habitat, wetlands, all those types of natural areas. We have very supportive policies on those, but again, we're looking at a very zoomed out policy direction. So the actual implementation tool would be something like the land development code, and that would need to include requirements for those types of things.
Thanks, Melissa. Next question is from Herbert. It says, what are you planning to do with evacuating the people coming into the state during hurricanes? Spreading out the residential area in the rural service area only creates a larger problem. 2 interstates. I don't know if Sean wants to.
I was gonna say, Sean, would you mind
Sure.
handling the evacuation
Yeah.
question?
Absolutely, yeah. Evacuation is a concern. It's an ongoing concern with development. We have a concept of a coastal high hazard area, which is the most hazardous area along the coast and needs to be evacuated first. And so we limit or restrict any new density in that area. So that's going to help address the evacuation issue, but it is going to be an ongoing issue, and we're going to have to look at it and to try to make sure either people can shelter or they can evacuate during a hazardous situation.
Thanks, Sean. Next, we have a question from Brian. It says, how is infrastructure going to be handled? The growth in South County has been explosive. Developers are building primarily residential sites, with the roadways being left in the dust. Examples are State Route 674 in the Waimama area, Cypress Village Boulevard, adding an unused golf cart lane with multiple residential developments under construction in the area of 19th Avenue Northeast. So much construction. What happened to zoning?
I'm not sure how to answer that question exactly. It sounds like that's a very project specific question.
Yeah.
So that would really be handled at site development. Again, we at the Planning Commission, we're the stewards of the comprehensive plan, which is a general policy document that is very zoomed out and purposely talks in more general speaking and in a more comprehensive way. I mean, hence the name comprehensive. So that sounds like something that you might need to maybe call Public Works or something like that. And we can talk offline. I can try to brainstorm and help you on that.
Thank
Well, and
you.
I'll just add too really quickly, I think, one of the things that within the updates, we did hear in the survey that maximizing that existing infrastructure and really prioritizing that with our development is essentially important. So that's definitely something that's been incorporated into our policies.
Thank you. The next question is from Austin. It says, has there been any language added for developers to plant new trees to replace the ones removed from development?
We do not have language about replanting trees in the comprehensive plan. That would be something more in a technical manual or a land development code. One of the implementation tools that I was talking about that would come into effect in a site development. Sean, did you have anything to add just from a natural resource perspective?
Yeah, I would just reiterate basically what you said, Melissa, is that the comp plan is protective over natural areas and protective about the tree canopy in general, which in the comp plan is meant to be general. And where those specifics about how trees get replaced or preserved are in the land development code. So if you have concerns specifically about tree preservation and replacement and how it's done in site development, really that's a land development code issue, and we don't address the land development code. Those are specifics to the development manual for the land development code.
And Sean, it looks like Bianca with Public Works mentioned something in the chat that if you have any project specific questions, that to email them to pwcustomer@hcflgov.net. That's in the chat. So if you all want to take that, make a note of that. Thank you, Bianca, very much. What a nice resource.
Yes, and if there are land development code questions, our staff is happy to help direct you to the appropriate county staff member to answer those as well in the future if you just contact myself or Melissa.
We're starting to get a lot of just random kind of discussion, not really questions within some of this chat. So let me try to find the questions. Here we go. There's another one from Herbert. It says, how many gallons of water does an average single family use, and how does that reflect on our water needs?
Well, it looks like Mr. Yasso Gonzalez already answered that in the chat.
That's right, that's
Um,
right. This is Yasser Gonzalez here once again, a veteran of the water management districts. If you used to do a rough calculation, 2.6 person per house and around 73 gallons for residential uses, it's around 190 gallons per home going forward. So that will be when they forecast residential, they will be using 190 going forward. I mean, they're gonna use an average, but 190, it's very stable, doesn't really fluctuate that much in my significant experience in water management.
Will this, thank you, Yasser. Question from Mike. Will this new flue reduce the urban sprawl and increase infill and urban density in the urban core areas of the county?
Yes, I can take that question. That is exactly what we're trying to do here. As Amy outlined in the presentation, we have a couple goals. The first two goals are about growth management. So in one strategy, we have tried to beef up our policies, trying to create incentives for inward growth. And we already have some bonuses like an infill density bonus and other tools like that in the plan today that also assist with that. But the major new initiative is Centers and Connections. And then secondarily, once we've reached that capacity in the urban service area, or actually I should say not once, it proactively, our goal is to create master plans or have them created so that we do accommodate some of this growth into the rural area in specific places. And as Amy mentioned, we are not talking geographies right now, but we are trying to get the policies in place so that we can move forward in the near future to help accommodate that growth both inside and outside the urban service area.
Thank you, Melissa. And I'll add also that we work in close collaboration with the city of Tampa and our other jurisdictions. The city of Tampa is absorbing a large percentage. We're seeing the growth here in the city as well. So that plan is also reflective of that accepting of a large percentage of growth within the city of Tampa itself. All right. That question's been answered. There are a lot of I think we might have reached the end. There's just some statements in the chat. I'm not seeing any more questions. I don't know if
David, we can also open it up if
Right.
people would like to raise their hand and speak. We can take questions that way too.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. If we've missed your question or if you have additional questions, you can use the raise hand feature to raise your hand and we'll allow you to speak. You can also keep chatting if you'd like, but Andrea put this into the chat. A draft language will be available on the website. This recording will be available on our website as well as our presentation, so you can go back and look at it. And I do want to just mention one more time that we will have our project advisory team meeting on November 15th and 16th. So you're welcome to attend. And you can also check out our website for those dates and to register for those events where we'll be diving even deeper into some of this language and really going through some of the technical aspects. And of course, you can always contact our team and we'll be happy to provide more specific information if you have a specific project in mind or a specific area that you want to look at and take a deeper dive in. We're happy to talk with you on the phone, or even if you want to meet us in person, whatever is most convenient for you. And
It looks like there's a question in the chat from David Coleman 2 minutes ago. What can you do to stop our water bills from doubling again? Will you stop salt water intrusion and the degradation of our aquifer? Will you pump reclaimed water into our aquifer? I'm going to go on a limb, David, and say that I'm not the right person to answer that question. But it sounds like Bianca is here, and perhaps since she's with Public Utilities, you could send an email to them and ask them those questions. Again, with the comprehensive plan, we are very zoomed out. We're talking about setting general policies and the vision for the community, and not specifically about water bills or things like that. Though I do hear you. I'm also a homeowner, so I do get water bills as well. That this is just not the venue to answer that question, but we can try to help you find the right place to get your answer. Okay.
Excellent. We do have a Mike who has his hand raised. Lionel, if you'll allow him to unmute.
Hey, how is everyone tonight?
Good, how
Just
are you, Mike?
want to say good. Just want to say thank you for doing this. You know, and every time there's a government change, it's very hard for the citizens. I used to live in Brandon, and then the mall went in, and then I moved to Apollo Beach, and that turned into the same thing. And now I'm in Waimama, and I'm afraid that the same thing's going to happen again. So, you know, I do understand that developers have to go somewhere. But unfortunately, when we use gross acreage to define lot size or densities, however you want to call it, that doesn't really give us a real picture, right? I mean, if we say somebody, oh, you've got 2 to an acre max, but then they're using gross acres and a third of the land is wetlands, and now it's all squished down somewhere else. We're putting 20 acres aside for school district Hillsborough County. All of a sudden, we're still at 8 or 10 houses per acre in an area that, you know, yesterday was outside the urban services area, but Eisenhower says, we'll throw water lines in, we'll throw sewer lines in. And the county says, absolutely, this is consistent, when half the time it's not. How do we get the future land use to be more consistent with, instead of doing this de facto expansion of the urban services area? Is this new flu going to prevent exactly what Eisenhower is doing right now? And just to keep this in mind, their entire projects, I sat all week, the last week, I've been sitting and waiting for their flagmen, because even the detours with the new water lines going in, the detours have the roads closed. So I can't go in, which the water lines getting put in are from Eisenhower. The road putting in is because of Eisenhower. How do we prevent the de facto expansion of the urban services area with this new flu?
Well, I would say good questions. With the new strategic expansion language, it was written in a way, the policies, and again, you can see a copy of, I know we went through slides, which are more general in nature, but you can see the clean version of what we're going to bring to the Planning Commission, the Board of County Commissioners, as well as a red line version. So you can see what the older language was, what's crossed out and things like that. But this strategic expansion language that's been added is all new. And those policies really outline what we want to see there. So it talks about extensive public participation, which, you know, I would hope that you would want to participate in that. It sounds like you got a lot of good ideas. It talks about coordinating with all those external agencies, the school district, you know, EPC when there's natural resources, all those types of things, you know, public utilities, public works. There's really going to be a heavy coordination effort. And then also another thing that we pointed out, and as a requirement, the master plan should really address where people are going to get their things, where are they going to work, how are you going to get your goods and services, that we're not creating new spaces that have the same problems that we have today, you know, where you're in deep South County and you have to drive all the way up to Big Bend just to pick up a gallon of milk. Those are the kind of things that we're trying to address and to get ahead of, and kind of borrowing on those lessons learned from the way that unincorporated Hillsborough County has been developed to date. So we're trying to, again, get ahead of that and be proactive. It does seem that you know, in the past that, you know, we've edged on more of the reactiveness. We haven't gone out and done the proactive stuff. And that's what we're trying to work on here. Andrew, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something else?
Oh, no, I have a participant here who can't find the raise hand button. So I was just putting my hand up so they can speak next.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to add, you know, Melissa, I completely agree. I think that that's extremely important, and that master planning process, you know, focusing on the engagement, making sure everyone's a part of the process, that's really the crux of what we're trying to do. I'll also, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but the that Centers and Connections, that's another reason why I'm really excited about that section, is because that's focusing on where, pinpointing growth in the areas that we want it to happen inside the urban service area, and really maximizing that existing infrastructure and looking at those different areas like our university areas that are excited for this, and where it's really going to bring a benefit to the community. And by pinpointing that growth in areas that want it, you also preserve all the other areas around it that are so beautiful. So that's such a beautiful marriage, I think, there. Melissa, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Andrew, do you have your hand raised again?
Do you have someone else asking a question?
Well, Herbert Belcher was having trouble earlier finding the raise hand button. I'm not sure if he would like to speak, but I just didn't want to pass him by if he did.
Absolutely. Lionel, could we unmute Herbert?
1 second, let me find it.
Absolutely, no worries. And I know that we've got a few more folks with their hand raised. We'll get to you in just a second. And we also have some more folks asking questions in the chat.
Looks like Herbert's offline at the moment. We
Okay,
can go
no
to the next
worries.
person.
I think
All right,
Harrison is
Harrison.
next. Harrison, can he be unmuted, please?
Hey, can you guys hear me? I'm not on my Wi-Fi right now,
We
so I don't know if I
can,
can.
yes.
Okay, cool.
Hi.
Yeah, so I mentioned this in the chat, but I just wanted to re-uplift it. I'm a little concerned about HB 1191. I know that that's still in the study phase, like it just got approved for a study, but that is like the phosphogypsum bill. If that were to be implemented locally sometime in the future, like what would be your response to that, or what would be your language around that? Because I'm personally concerned about the infrastructure concerns with like the durability of existing roads, but then also the climate effects that that's going to have. Do you have like language around that, or like planned language around that?
No, Harrison, at this point, I mean, since it's just in the beginning stages, I honestly, that's the first I'm hearing about it. So we do have a legislative liaison who goes to Tallahassee and communicates back about planning related items. I hadn't heard about this one yet, but that's how we knew about the Live Local Act and Senate Bill 250, which Amy went over in the beginning of the presentation. So is anyone else here on staff, is anyone familiar with this legislation and has anything to say?
Possibly. Harrison, can you clarify, is that the bill that's allowing FDOT and other road maintaining agencies to use alternative materials in the asphalt mix?
Oh, cool. Okay, let me unmute. Yes, that's the one.
Okay, no, we don't have any specific language in the comp plan related to that. I can probably offer you information that you may already know since you're familiar with the bill, but the materials that would be used to build roads have to get clearance and pre-authorization through FDOT. They go through what I understand to be a pretty rigorous materials testing process, many steps to that process, and it's fairly well regulated. I don't exactly know how the bill would impact that. I guess the only answer I can give you now is that we'll stay tuned and keep our eye on that. If it starts to, if it has implications for local materials uses, then that's something that may be addressed in the comp plan.
Okay, thank you. That's just something I was worried about if it does reach the local level. I know it's only like a small like test area right now that they've authorized, but just something I wanted to bring.
I'm sorry, I wish
to
I
the
could
table.
answer with a little bit more understanding of it. I'm only vaguely familiar with the bill, but with respect to the TPO, that's not really affecting us because we believe that it's mostly pertaining to FDOT. But you know, I could study up on
Right.
that and back in touch with you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John. We do have some other questions in the chat, and I'm going to take a stab at Travis's question. He writes, how does the commission decide to allow the city to annex in county land for the specific purpose of developing? This seems like a loophole to get around county regulations. Well, the annexation process set up through state law, and really the power really does exist with the 3 municipalities in unincorporated. They have the legal authority to annex property either through a voluntary annexation with a particular property owner or through a area-wide vote. But that is all set out by the state, and the county really, the county can provide comments to the municipalities about the effect of the annexation, but they really have no legal authority to approve or disapprove of an annexation. So next question is from Debbie. It says, please address how wildlife is being affected and causing dangerous situations in I assume neighborhoods being built in areas from Manatee County northward. People cannot get wildlife removed. That seems maybe they're referencing wildlife corridors, I think, in their question. I don't
It sounds like they're concerned about the displacement of wildlife or you know, from development. And I think, you know, unfortunately we're a growing area, and we're you know, the plan is trying to maximize the use of the land we have, is particularly within the urban service boundary, and encourage redevelopment opportunities. So we're trying to accommodate the population in the best way we can that avoids natural areas and greens areas as well. But unfortunately, to some extent, people have the rights to develop their land. Every one of us lives on property that used to have wildlife on it. And unfortunately, we're growing, and some of these areas are going to grow and are going to convert, and there's going to be some displacement of wildlife.
Thank you, Sean. We have another question from Tan. Their question is, what is the maximum population growth before there is no more room?
Yeah, this is Yasser Gonzalez. I was just in the process of typing that in. The county can accommodate under current allowable densities. The county can theoretically accommodate 2.3 million people. That will be from 1.5 right now. So that will be you know, a 54% increase in population. Now, unincorporated county itself is, you know, at build out, it will be around 1.6 versus one around just over 1 million right now. So unincorporated county will be accommodating around 600,000 people by, you know, by a build out. Again, this is very theoretical, and this is based on allowable densities and all sorts of assumptions. So again, just take it with a grain of salt.
Thank you,
And I
yes.
do want to just mention, I know we've had the question in the chat, and I've been asked this before of about the population growth in unincorporated Hillsborough County. And, you know, it's our job as planners to plan for potential growth. You know, it's not something that we're out there saying, yes, we're going to have this many people. It's something we're saying based on the previous projections, based on what we're seeing. This is a possibility of what we could be looking at, that 350,000 by 2045. And so we want to plan for that so that we can preserve our areas, so that we can have those beautiful communities, have that same, you know, those choices and the opportunities for people within the urban service area and outside of the urban service area. So I did want to clarify, like, that's what we're doing here, is we're trying to plan so that we can have our beautiful community preserved. I also wanted to mention, if you'd like to use the raise hand feature, it is at the bottom under the reactions tab of the screen. You can also hover if you're seeing your own face, you can hover over that and click the 3 buttons on the right-hand side and you'll be able to raise your hand there.
And,
Yeah, go ahead, Esther.
and if I may, again, going back to just hammer that point again,
Yeah.
like Sean said, by law, we're supposed to be planning for the growth that's coming. And notice that the growth that we're forecasting is based on historical trends. So
Yes.
we're not making any wild assumptions. You know, we don't have anybody. We would like more tourists to come, but not certainly necessarily more residents to come. You know, like people out there really, hyping up the area for tourism, but not necessarily, move here because of the, we have all this land and things like that. So again, these are people that are using these trends that may change and may be affected by, some of you said insurance. There may be, again, more hurricanes on the way. So there will be other things that may make that fluctuate. But so far, we're seeing a strong growth in the 8 counties that make the Tampa Bay region, and we're seeing that going forward through 2050. Thank you.
Yeah, really great point, Esther. I also just want to mention quickly before we get on to more comments here that the draft language is available, as Andrea and Melissa both mentioned. It's available on our website, planhillsboro.org/HC land use, which is in the chat. There's also throughout the chat some different contact information. If you've missed it, if you can't see the chat or are having trouble on screen, you can always get in touch with Melissa and Andrea or follow us on social media, whatever's easiest for you, and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction. David, I'll go back to you.
Right, thank you very much. There's a comment in here regarding from Natalie. She's basically saying that, some people out in the rural area want to be out in the rural area. They don't need stuff within 10 to 15 minutes of that. And just to keep that in mind, that, we need to preserve the rural area, was more of a statement. There's statements regarding, we have a comment from Debbie. We are in deep South County and only drive 3 miles to get a gallon of milk, but because of traffic and building too much for this area too quickly, it takes 20 minutes. We want to remain rural. Hopefully she's located in the rural area. More comments. There was, I was going to start typing this out. There was more questions about annexation. We're not annexation experts. That's handled from the municipalities. We don't process the annexations in our office. We do the plan amendment that designates the land, that gives any annexed property by the cities a land use category, but we do not process the annexation itself. In regards to annexations for a particular area, we'll say it's a 20 property area. Those property owners of that 20 property area that are to be annexed would get the vote. It's not a citywide vote. It's not a countywide vote. It's just specifically for the people, whether in a particular area, if they want to get annexed, those property owners vote. So it's not a general vote of the general public. Let's see.
David, if I can chime in, I think I saw a question from Austin for the Planning Commission staff. It said, according to the current new plan draft, so I guess the draft that we have, where do you see the county in 10, 20 years with this new plan?
Well, I mean, I think I can answer that. The vision or the draft that we have out right now, looks out 20 years. So the horizon date we have currently is 2025. That's in 2 years, not a very long horizon. So hence the update. The new horizon date would be 2045. So with that update, we would see the policies that we have in the plan come to fruition. So we would see the protection of the natural resources. We would see more growth inside the urban service area so we can maximize the infrastructure and work on those growth management goals. And we would, I'm guessing at that point, at some point in the near future here, we're going to be triggered to look into the master planning so we can accommodate some strategic expansion, outside the urban service area. So that's something that we'll be looking forward to as well. I didn't know if there was something specific that person had in mind with regard to the vision. There's just there's just a lot that goes into that. So I didn't know if there was something specific they had in mind.
Oh, I think that was great, Melissa.
And if I may, this is Yasser Gonzalez once again. We're also going to be seeing that most of the new population is going to be going to like the served areas, what's called the urban service area. So we're not seeing a significant number of people going to the rural service area, which is a lot of people that are afraid of that happening. Just to give you an example, 2045, we're looking at 88% of the population in the urban service area, and only 12% of the population going to the inside the rural service area. That's and the rural service area will go from 8 to 12, which again is although it's a big jump in terms of like percentages, but it still is nearly 9 out of 10 people will be living in the urban service area. So that's something that we're seeing through 2050, and again in the next 10 to 20 years.
Thank you, Yasser. There's another question from Robert. Does the plan include sustainability regarding food, water, wastewater, waste flow, and energy production?
What we're talking about tonight is mostly the future land use element, but there are other elements of the comprehensive plan that were already updated, specifically One Water, which deals with potable water and wastewater, and there is a solid waste element, and all of them address meeting our long-term requirements of the county to provide those services in a sustainable way. And they're all online on our website.
Thank you, Sean. We have a question from Debbie. She says, may we please keep our wells and septic on rural land? I think there's nothing in the comp plan that would require people to remove their wells and septic. That's my understanding. I don't know if Sean or Melissa, you want to elaborate a little more.
Yeah, that's correct. But not only that, you're not allowed to have water and sewer in the rural area outside your urban service boundary. So if you wanted it, you could not get it. And only under very, very limited circumstances, if you're adjacent to the urban service boundary, would it be available to you. So if you're in the rural area that is outside the urban service boundary, you could expect yourself to be able to stay on well and septic.
And if you're in the urban service area and you have existing septic and water, there's nothing that requires you to hook up. It's encouraged, but that's all the questions that I see in the chat. Unless you see some.
David, did you? I saw a question from Robert earlier. Did you?
That
was the sustainability
water.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we got that one, and I think some of them have been answered in the chat.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone with the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen.
There are no raised hands right now.
Yeah, no, please.
We'll give it just a few more minutes. And as we mentioned, if you do have questions about specific areas, feel free to contact us at any time. I do see Mike has his hand raised.
Hey, I just want to ask if the chat will be available online somewhere also, because there is a lot going on there and it's hard to keep up. So will that be available on the county website also?
Yeah, the chat will also be recorded and probably saved as a PDF so you can download it as well.
Thank you. He said the chat is being recorded.
I'm sorry.
The chat is being recorded, yes.
And it will be available. I think it was hard to, it was a little muffled because it was
Yeah.
hard to hear him.
And if there is anything you missed, you can always reach out to us and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Clara Lahed had a question. I know you've not heard back from the school district yet about some of these issues. However, I would ask, what are your plans for ensuring the sustainability and availability will be further addressed? And she also said that question relates to adequate school space.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's my understanding that the interlocal agreement is being revisited currently with the school district in Hillsborough County. So we will be at least knowing about those conversations, if not in the meetings themselves. And then that is one element, the public facilities, or the public school facilities element. That was one of the most recently approved and adopted elements before we started our larger effort for the comprehensive plan update. I believe that was updated in around like 2015. That being said, we know we need to look at that element again and update that based on the changes with the interlocal. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as well.
We did have a question about our project advisory team meetings a little bit ago in the chat. And I just wanted to mention, yes, they are open to the public. The project advisory team will go over this same presentation, and we'll have a little bit more in-depth discussions on some of the technical details. So you're welcome to join us either in person or virtually. Again, that's on November 15th and 16th. So feel free to come and join us if you want to take an even deeper dive into some of these topics. And thank you, Andrea. She just put that calendar into the chat so you can register for those. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat or raised hands. Oh, we do have one more. Could you address flood control issues due to the extensive development in South County?
The rules for development are that no more water can leave a site after development as was leaving the site pre-development. So the rules require that it should not exacerbate anyone's flooding risk through development.
Thank you, Sean. A lot of great questions tonight. Sean's getting his words in. Excellent. Oh, and Yasser has put some wonderful data and link to that in the chat as well.
Yeah, just we keep we have articles there in that site that I just posted on the chat, and again, that's where we keep our population and employment trends. So I see a lot of discussion about growth. You can go in there and you may be able to dive to a specific community and see what that says. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions. We're also going to be publishing an article that will summarize any population growth trends through 2050 for unincorporated Hillsborough County. That's coming out early next month. So and again, happy to answer any questions related to these trends. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasser. I'll also ask everyone to please be as respectful as possible within the chat. This is being recorded and will be made available for the public. Are there any other questions directed to the Planning Commission staff that we can answer, or any of the other staff members here? From Clara, we have a great question. Has there been any discussion about reducing the tolls on toll roads to keep traffic down on our rural roads?
Johnny, would you mind taking that one?
I'm assuming that you're talking about THEA, and the answer is no. One of the provisions of THEA's charter and most other implementing agencies that operate toll roads is that once the toll policy is established, it's almost never the case that it can be reduced. That would be a factor. So like when an agency would go to the bond market to get financing or make financing available to build the road, one of the key criteria that the bond market would look at is recovery of tolls and the cost. And once that cost is established, it's almost never the case that it'll go down. It may increase due to inflation or other purposes. Not speaking specifically about THEA, just generally, it may go up in some instances, but almost never down.
Thank you, Johnny.
I hope that answers your question, Clara.
And Clara, if you'd like to talk to Johnny more, I know we'll probably see you at the project advisory team meeting if you're available, but if not, feel free to give us a call and we'll connect you and we can have more in-depth discussions as well.
And if I may add to what John is saying there, because we've had high inflation, arguably those tolls are cheaper. So they may be, there may be some issues in terms of being able to, funding going forward, because again, they're frozen those tolls, yet we've had high inflation and they have to procure materials and in consumables that are higher priced than they expected. Thank you.
Thanks, Yasser. So Clara also asked, could we consider a stipend?
Clara, I'd be happy to pass whatever message you would like me to THEA. We do meet with them regularly. I'll reach out to them and ask maybe what other alternatives we could look at to reduce congestion on rural roads in South County. My thought and my experience tells me that if you reduce the cost of the tolls, that'll encourage more folks to go down there. So maybe we would need another strategy to alleviate the congestion, but and I see there's another stipend for lower income families. Do you mean to access the THEA or the expressway? I keep calling it THEA, that's the agency. You mean to access the Selman?
And Clara, feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to speak, or you can just type into the chat. Whatever's easiest for you.
All right, Clara, I will post my contact info in the chat, and if you'd like, you can reach out to me via email.
Thanks so much, Johnny. Excellent. I'm not seeing at this time any other chats or any raised hands. David, are you seeing anything that I've missed?
No, I am not.
Again, this is Yasser once again, and again, it's been a lot of discussion about growth and what's happening. And one of the things that we constantly look at these things and study these numbers and slice them 45,000 ways. So one of the things we've been looking at of late is that has growth accelerated since the pandemic? The data is not saying that. The data is saying that growth has remained fairly the same. And again, unless there are people that we're not registering somehow, and again, we made all sorts of forecasts for revenues and for everything for that. So we really want to know, we really want to get a handle on these population numbers. And part of the population numbers that's being released officially by the University of Florida, we're not seeing acceleration of the growth rate. So, we were safe to plan with the historical growth rates because the curve has not shifted. Just put it out there for y'all to know that.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Yasser, and the entire Plan Hillsborough team, as well as everyone else who's joined us tonight. I do want to just mention again that we are compiling all of your wonderful comments into a comprehensive list, a comment matrix, and that will be available to the public so you can see all the different wonderful questions that have been asked. And Andrea has also put into the chat some great information, her contact information, Melissa's contact information, as well as the PAT virtual meeting link that's going to be on the 16th. And of course, you can always join us in person on the 15th as well. But take a look at our website, planhillsborough.org/HC land use. Follow us on social media And we are so excited to have you join us today, and all your wonderful comments. We thank you so much.
Yes, Amy, thank you. I also wanted to say thank you to everyone. I know this is nighttime, this is your personal time, so we really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening and joining us, asking us hard questions, and getting us to hopefully answer your questions. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
You as well.